So it might just be the four of us.
Okay.
So is everybody on East Coast time?
I'm on East Coast time. Yep, Maryland.
Yes, sir.
Nice. All right. So so I posted a screenshot of kind of my notes here and just keeping track, but right out of the gate, when was it? I don't even know when we started this. Was it last week? I jotted down some notes, and I put the FPV Freedom Coalition is here to assemble a list of standards developed by the FPV global community and lobby to get them accepted by multiple governments. So it's a big challenge, obviously, but the best way to start chipping away at any challenge is to, doing something. So what I had posted earlier was kind of a screenshot of progress, just to do we have somebody else? Oh, great. Cujo. All right. So we have, I just wanted to, again, post the progress. We have step one, collect the information and understand the landscape. So I did kind of a sloppy job here of consolidating it, but these are kind of the feedback points from both within Discord and the Rotor Riot Facebook group. This was the feedback from you guys. Actually, Mike, you posted something that got quite a big response as well.
Yeah, I saw that. I was surprised actually, but I'm glad.
But I just kind of consolidated them into these points. The first one being pilots want to fly without the fear of breaking rules and getting arrested. So this is a combination of, stuff I've seen posted, plus just comments over the years and just, being within the community and hearing chatter here and there. People are really afraid to break the rules. And one of the problems are they don't know what the rules are. And of course, people will say, well, look them up. Well, then the problem is it's really hard to understand because you might have a note here, a mandate here, references yet another law, and it's just really difficult for people to understand. So, so that's that. We'll come back to it. Then we have it would bring comfort to know the 336 isn't going to change. I think people are afraid that what's going to happen is the 336 is going to change. They're not going to know it, or they're not going to understand what it changes to, or it's just unknown, therefore scary. And then we have quads should not be classified as drones. I think people are concerned that the word drone somehow negatively impacts our rights. I think it's not just the perception, but it's also how things are defined. So maybe a potential is that we come up with a new word for what it is we fly. Therefore, it's not covered, but they're defining it. So the FAA is essentially labeling what a drone is. So I'm not sure what to do with that one, but so next we have everyone should use real data instead of scare tactics, which I absolutely agree. I don't like, when they talk about something as if everybody just knows that it's bad, rather than actually citing statistics. So I think that's a really important one. Then, of course, we have people that want to share the airspace with commercial, so they feel the hobby and commercial should share airspace. I think that one's a tough one to define, but there's nothing wrong with it per se as it is, as far as a talking point. And then I think the most important right now that we can move forward is FPV pilots want recognized as an organized group and to be included in the discussions regarding regulations of hobbyist flyers. I think that's probably the most important one here, because even though hobbyists by default fall under the AMA, I think a lot, and I'll say a lot of us want a voice that speaks specifically to FPV pilots, not just a generalization that we're kind of force fit into. So I think that one's an important one. That's one that I think we can handle with a petition. So essentially, if we outline what it is we want to accomplish and create the petition for that, just by the petition being recognized can then recognize the group, and then I think we're on to something. Okay, so anyhow, from there we get into define attainable and measurable goals. And by the way, let me just post this in the general chat just so everybody's looking at the same thing.
I think you posted it earlier.
I did. I'm just gonna post it
I'll have to look
just so it's fresh.
later.
That's okay. I'll talk through it. I just want to be accommodating to those that want to read along. Okay, so then step 2 in this process is define the attainable and measurable goals. I kind of jumped ahead on that, but I put get the FPV Freedom Coalition to be recognized as the official representative for FPV pilots, earning us a seat for discussions regarding regulations for hobby flyers. So I see that as the most attainable goal out of the gate that can then lead to these other goals. So what can we do, in order to attain that goal? Now we've identified it, is make a tactical plan. So really just the first 2 steps that I have here is petition and educational materials, and then distributing those. So I think, and when I say educational, I mean there should be an idiot's guide to you are flying legally if, so here's how you can fly legally and not worry about looking over your shoulder or getting arrested or these other things that people are afraid of. And I think getting someone like the FAA to sign off on it, kind of like, hey, we've outlined these very simple rules, and it can have a date. It could say, for the next 6 months or until something changes and it'll be notified or whatever. But we can say right now, if you want to fly, here's steps 1, 2, and 3, and you can fly. I think that would go a long way to helping people out without changing any laws or rules or anything. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think that's where, just having an organized group that communicates with the FPV community and educates them on, hey, this is what you are allowed to do by law and without getting into trouble. I think that's going to go a long way. And then the other one was the petition. If we do have a petition that says, hey, we want to represent ourselves in a sense, we don't want necessarily only represented by another entity, but we want to have our own voice as well. I think that's an important piece. And then, of course, the next after that is to execute it and then repeat on the next level of goals.
Mm-hmm.
So now it looks like we have a few more people joined us. Welcome, guys. Oh, Scarecrow, I didn't think you were going to be able to make it. So, okay, so if everybody can see in the general text channel, I just posted what I went over, and I think probably what would be a good next step is you guys poke holes in it, ask questions, go ahead and let's talk.
Well, I think probably, and this is Mike Magic, probably one of the biggest things is how do we convince the FAA that we are a organized community?
Well, that's what I believe the petition will do. I believe if let's just say, oh, go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure that a petition alone will do that. That's my only concern. We are talking about a government entity, and I don't know that just saying, hey, we're the FPV coalition, they're going to recognize that, even if we do have, I don't know, 50,000 signatures. I don't know how that works.
Well, there's, I would say the easiest way to find out is to ask them.
Well,
So,
yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that. So,
no, but that's a really good point. We're making an assumption, and you're right. Let's find out. Let's find out what that goal is. So, I'm taking notes here. The very important one is how do we get the FAA to recognize us as the entity that, and I think also, getting the majority of the industry leaders on board will be a big piece of it.
absolutely.
And they're not going to unless they know what they're signing up for. So that's why I started this Discord channel very informally, because I wanted to get a pulse before really pulling the trigger on anything. I want to say, what is it that the majority of us agree upon that we want to achieve?
Mhm.
And then once that's done, we can really hit the ground running, and seeing who all is on board with that.
Right.
Magic, this is
Wait, hey, Squishy, I think you got a lot of wind noise.
All right, I'll put on push to talk. I'm skateboarding right now.
There you go.
So this is Cujo. So I do believe either in the current 3.3 or in the current Authorization Act, or in the one that just passed the House of Representatives a couple months ago, there is a clause for what is considered a community-based organization, similar to the AMA, and I think it lines out what needs to be in place for that to happen. And whether we become a CBO or not, that's a good kind of way to get at the issue of how to get recognized. If you guys catch what I mean by that.
Yeah, did you say it's outlined? I thought I remembered seeing that somewhere where they actually had it outlined on what is a community-based organization.
Yeah, I believe it's in the either the new one or the old one. I'd have to double check my notes when I get home and see where that's outlined at. But it is in there. I do remember reading it.
Hold
It
on,
seems like I remember seeing that as well somewhere.
Okay, but I think this really isn't, well, hopefully really isn't much more than a phone call that we can call. I do have FAA contacts. Actually, a few of the Rotor Riot members, we have direct contact with certain FAA members, or employees, I should say. We just haven't, we want to get more organized before we start contacting people.
Yep.
Absolutely, and I know Squishy's working on pulling together some of the industry leaders, and I'm sure, Chad, that you'd have a lot of pull in that as well. But as many as we can get together, whether it's Tim from Get FPV or Trappy or Serge, these people, I guess I consider them the godfathers of quads, but these people that really have an impact in the industry that can really help guide the initiative going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I have talked to some people informally, and I even talked to Tim over at Get FPV and Lumineer, and he's definitely interested in it. They had started something, I want to say similar, but it was still different. It was the FPV task, or what was it? FPVA, I always forget, TA, fpvta.org. Which it really hasn't done anything, or they haven't posted anything for quite a while, but they did have a lot of people on board. So those talks are going positively. But again, until we actually get something, and there's the link if any of you guys want to look at it, I put it in the general. Yeah, so I'm very hopeful that we'll get a lot of the industry leaders on board. But again, first, I would really like to define what it is. Have a very basic, simple outline of here's what we want to do, here's what we stand for, and then get everybody going in the same direction. So for those of you who have joined a little bit later, I went over the notes there that I'm reviewing, kind of the status of things, of where we are. And again, they're just notes. We're not pulling the trigger on anything today. But I want people to ask questions or poke holes. So 507 asked why the F is bold. I put that because I think that's the most important, and as far as an order of importance, I think it's. Oh, there's a question mark. I don't know why the question mark's there, but no, I think that's the first step. Once we can get recognized as the entity or the body that represents the voice of the FPV pilot, then we can get a lot more done.
Yeah.
So that's why it's in bold.
So I'm curious what the I understand that commercial wants airspace, and I understand that we want airspace, and all of that is well and good, and I think the whole thing will push the industry forward. But at the same time, what's the consensus about transponders and whatnot, adding those to quads and the cost and whatnot?
Well, I think something like the transponder, I think, is going to be a much more complex issue, and it's going to be pretty in depth to get through something like that. So, I personally, I'm trying that. Oh, go ahead.
I just said, well, we have our registration numbers, just like the tail numbers.
Yeah, and I think so. For me personally, if they said, okay, you have to have a transponder, but you're allowed to, fly around buildings and and things like that, then there's a trade-off. As long as you're flying safely, and it's going to be a constant nudge from each side. But the first thing we need is a voice out there representing what an actual FPV pilot is, because I don't believe that really exists as far as any government interaction right now.
Not really.
I mean, it does per se, but I don't think it's not the primary objective of the AMA, which I love the AMA. I've been a member. I think their insurance is great. I think they've got a lot to offer. However, FPV pilots are not their primary concern.
Wholeheartedly agree.
So yeah, other questions? Concerns, input?
I wanted to say is, according to Bloomberg, it said that drone incidents are down this year by about 75-ish reports.
Well, that's good.
It's slightly down. It said last year there were 1,754, and then this year 1,688.
Yeah, and then.
So 507 asks, the commercial entity suggested that all drones needed transponders, so they would not, or all commercial entities suggested that all drones need transponders so they would not collide. What makes our quads different from a bird or a kite that they need to avoid anyway? I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that other than, I think a kite is a really good example. A bird's separate, that's nature, but a kite, I would say, would be very similar, other than they say it's tethered to the ground. But I think that also kind of falls under the. Yeah.
Here's a thought: is the ultralight aircraft? They don't have transponders. They can fly under 5. These are manned.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting, the experimental aircraft regulations.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
You just look at the powered paragliders; they're way different. Standard aircraft, they don't have.
Right, and you don't even have to have a license to fly them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I still don't completely understand that. It's still, other than things getting grandfathered in, it's quite astonishing to me.
Yeah, very much so.
That you can build an aircraft and put your body in it and fly it. I mean, I guess they suppose that since your body is in it, you're going to be more careful.
Well, Peter Shreepall.
Yeah, exactly. So, Squishy, you're on here. I'd love to hear from you. Did you just wreck? Well, I don't know if you know, we can't hear you.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
you go.
now we can hear you.
Yep. Hear you.
I'll just go slow then. I'm out e-skating around town. I heard the mentions of the COB, and I do remember that description from the FAA. It wasn't any kind of official ruling. Like, it wasn't in part in any kind of, it was sort of a suggestion or an outline, real loose. And they also said in their own words that it's not like, if you go and you try to conform to those COB suggestions, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a COB. It's still not in line. They would still judge it or take it as a case-by-case basis. Another thing to add is that those COB guidelines or suggestions include a lot of rules, where the COB establishes a culture and a way of flying and enforces it within their own community, just like the AMA does, right? They have their own rules and regulations and so on and so forth. And I don't know if that's necessarily something you guys want to dive into or be a part of. So that's something to consider as well. I know forming it now in a way that it may become a COB later is a great idea and future-proofs it a lot. But it may be something that conflicts with where you guys want to go, and it may be just like a source of contention later for this community to have to come up with rules for itself. Whereas coming up with a mission and an organization like this, you know, with a good goal is a great idea. Coming up with rules for the FPV community may not be something you're willing to tackle at this point.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I think honestly, I think safety standards are past due. Like, I think that is very subjective, and the more people that enter, it's just going to compound any issues that we've, dealt with. So
Yeah.
I think, it is a daunting task, but I'm up for helping facilitate it. Like, I'm not going to be really staunch on which safety standards are implemented, but if I can get a group to agree on it, that's what I'll help facilitate. And not
guidelines is one thing, suggestions or like a guidelines or a definition of how we fly or just using common sense is one thing, but what they are going to ask for is an official rule,
right?
And that's where it gets sticky.
Well, now here's the flip side to that is if our entity does create the rules, then our entity has the power to change those rules.
Correct.
Where if we don't, then somebody else might that isn't as connected. So
yeah.
I think that's where my concerns come from.
And that's honestly what the ultralight guys did. In fact, the lobbyist for the ultralights was only one person, and that one person put in so much time and passion that you look at the results of what the FAA has done with ultralights just from that one person. And so that's, I mean, it is possible. We can do that here as well.
And I think Chad's right that safety standards are definitely overdue, but more so that there's a general understanding of what those safety standards are. It's not so much rules as it is just common sense, safety and common sense flying and whatnot, and more of an interpretation of what the rules and laws actually are as proposed by the FAA and whatnot, but in providing those in an easy to understand fashion to the FPV community.
Yeah, so it's a good thought. I think I can tell you in my own mind, starting down this path, I expect it to be a long, treacherous path. Like, this is not something, that I can just dabble in. I knew that when I said I'm going to commit to this, that it's going to be a very long path, and I'm okay with that because, quite frankly, this is still an extension of the community that in a way saved my own life, and I don't say that as seriously as some people that have contacted me, but it has impacted me tremendously, and I've seen it impact thousands of others, and I just think it's the next progression. So I'm not concerned about tackling a big task, but I do want to be very intelligent about how we tactically go about it so we can get it accomplished. If we try to grab too much too far too fast, it will fail.
Yes,
So
I think this is sort of a horse before the cart. This is more of an implementation or a means to get to the mission, but I think we need to clearly define what that mission is.
Right.
Before you get to that stage or have those discussions.
Yeah. I need to think about how that mission is worded that doesn't get into too many details that are going to change along the way. That's where I struggle a little bit. But that's what this Discord group has been really great on, getting a pulse of the community, and also some of the posts even in the Rotor Riot group.
So I would come back to like the primary need is support for the FPV hobby in a more like in a real and I mean that extremely generally, right? Just support in general. The fly sites and the lobbying and all of this stuff comes into that, but it's sort of like a multi-front battle,
Well,
But
I
mean,
think
you can say support the FPV hobby, but what does that actually mean, right? Like, where does the rubber meet the road? And so you have to be more clearly defined in what that goal is.
Well, for me, I mean, I can spell out a vision that I think has been developed over being alongside of so many diverse pilots. I think the freedom to fly is the most general term I can give for a mission. And now what does that mean? Well, that means, we don't want to be contained to fields. It doesn't mean that we can't have, locations identified, so say you want to open a flying location and it's 2 miles from the airport. I want to be able to do that and, do it properly, do it safely. But then I also want pilots to continue doing what's been so amazing over the past 2 to 3 years, and it's travel around the world and fly all of these great locations. And what that means is we're talking about some kind of international influence, and what does that look like? And I think if we gain favor with the FAA, then that opens up quite a bit to quite a few other countries, because a lot of countries will look at what the FAA is recognizing, acknowledging, and what they're doing, and oftentimes they'll follow suit or respect it at least.
Yeah, very much so. In regards to structure, when it comes to dealing with, say, the FAA or within the scope of different countries, when we go or you go to the FAA to propose things or to link up with them officially in some capacity, they're going to want you to be in an organization for just America, or you know what I mean, like a COB, right? I don't think they'd recognize an international organization the same as they would as a small organization just focusing on what their interest is in. Are you thinking of maybe dividing this into like some sort of division for each country so that they could have that more exclusivity needs met within that scope, like just what their needs are?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the way I saw it was just leave it open-ended to become international, but start, locally, U.S. based.
Got it.
I definitely think that focusing on U.S. based, because that's the immediate concern. I mean, at this juncture, I'm sure there's other pilots from other countries that have their concerns, but if we can develop it here, then we can liaise with people in other countries eventually to help them along the same path.
I remember hearing about the Tony Hawk Foundation doing exactly the same. They in fact had to get staff on to help other organizations in other countries to follow their model and what they had already done. So then they just walked people through the process of all the things that they had done, but they never really claimed to be international. But they definitely had a huge impact.
Yeah, so I guess that something like that would be perfectly fine. I guess what I don't want to do is turn our backs on our international, colleagues and friends, because we're so embedded internationally. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
That's true.
even
That's true. But the problems that we deal with regulatory or even just public image wise are so regional. Even between just Southern and Northern California, or between states, we have completely different hurdles and problems that we're overcoming all independently, all stemming from the same thing,
True. Yep, that makes sense. Okay,
But
so
I just imagine an international organization walking into the FAA and them kind of laughing at you, like, well, this is this is America.
right. Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's led with, this is an international organization. I think it's just knowing that we want to take international concerns into account.
Yeah. I would say that access is a key word for me. Access to places to fly, access to, existing, like just like we do, we go out in the wild and we find places, but also access to possible permanent places for beginners to go and learn, and just like the AMA clubs. We have been denied access to the AMA clubs in the U.S. in a lot of ways, and so this is one of the problems that kind of brings home the whole access thing.
Well, and that again is kind of what I'm talking about when we are a tack on to the AMA. Like if you're an AMA member and you go to an AMA, you know that. I mean, for the most part, if you're a traditional flyer, you're going to have some level of acceptance. If you're an FPV flyer, you almost walk in with the expectation that you're not going to be allowed. So I don't know how an organization like that can fully represent us. And again, I'm not poo-pooing the AMA in general. I'm just saying that they cannot also be our primary voice.
Exactly, and in fact, I'll give you guys a little bit of background from my own personal, county story. We have public resources here in the county of Sacramento. It's actually Sacramento County, and the city back in the '60s wrote a letter saying, all aircraft, RC aircraft, and everything are going to be using this land, and they leased that land over to the AMA for $1. And in the stipulations, it says you will include everybody. You won't discriminate against genres or people or nothing. And that club has since banned FPV since day one, against the wishes of the civic leaders who gave them those public resources. So now we have a test case in Sacramento where we could either take over an AMA club and make FPV legal, or we can go to the county and get their lease, voided, which is horrible, right? You don't want to go after the AMA in that kind of way. And so it's this huge problem where we're essentially banned from flying FPV from the very people who are supposed to be advocating for us.
That stinks.
Yeah. So I mean, we have test cases like this to attack all over the U.S. as examples of what an organization like this could bring and can do. So we already have those ready to go, but without a mission and the backing of the FPV community, we'll never be able to attack it.
Okay, so Sean, what if you took a stab at the mission? What would you say?
Well, I haven't yet. I'll have to think about it.
Just for the
I'm a big culture guy, you know me. So I'm all about preserving the hobby as a culture, as a place for beginners to come in, take on challenges, and go through the same journeys that maybe all of us have gone through in FPV, right? So that it's there for others when they want to do it. And it's at the threat of literally being, banned out of existence, or even from the inside, just from all of us in the infighting, right? It's just going to implode. So at some point, we just need to stop and save that, basically save the hobby, through whatever means possible.
Right.
Create places for people to fly, just create more support and go up against all of these enemies. There's giant meetings of airline lobbyists that are hell-bent they're paid $100,000 a year just to go lobby against drones. We have nothing like that.
Right.
So we're up against the mountain.
Well, I believe that we can get there, though. because just like this, I mean, look at the people that are already talking even about this very off the cuff casual Discord group. I'm already amazed at how many people I've talked to that know, hey Chad, what are you doing? I heard about this thing. And so once you start rolling something, once somebody says, okay, we're doing this hell or high water, other people jump in. Like, they do.
Yeah.
They really do. So I think, we've got the ball rolling. We just got to keep the momentum going. And, Sean, there's things like, let's do one park, let's find a place, let's find some support, let's get something. And here's what'll happen is somebody will probably fight it or whatever, and then it becomes a legal thing. And then we get, some lawyer like Brendan Schulman, wants to make an example of something, then they fight it, then that becomes a new law. There's a lot of
Well, it's precedent setting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that can be done just by doing something. So I think the idea here is let's really find out, okay, what is it that we have the capability of doing right now, so we can do something. Then we just keep leveraging that to the next level and the next.
Yeah.
And
I'm here mostly because I believe in this, and I don't think it's going to be successful unless we get the buy-in of all of the demographics within the FPV hobby. And you're talking about they're all fragmented, and they're all different, and they're all very headstrong and intelligent, and we need to sort of bring them all back together into just something. Whatever, it doesn't matter what that one thing is. But the FPV hobby itself is going to be stronger with everybody working together through some sort of vehicle to get these things done. Because without it, we have nothing.
I 100% agree. I don't want to dishearten people by thinking we have to get everyone, because 100% is going to be impossible. But we can get the majority, and and I think as long as we're working in a fairly humble manner, where none of us are getting egos bruised, but we're just, letting people help where they can help best, we will get a lot done. And quite frankly, I'm not excited about, going and speaking about any of this, but I will. So if somebody else steps up that's a better speaker, or, I will empower that person. So I just want to see this done. I mean, for 2 years, I've been thinking about this, saying, okay, we need some kind of representation. I've tried to do that through my company, Rotor Riot, but it's just too much. It's too broad. Like, we are a company, we can't be everything all the time. And so that's why this is more of a breakaway, where I said, okay, well, the company's running really well. So I have the liberty to be able to step away. I mean, so to speak, I'm still involved, but I can focus on something like this to really get results. And
this is going to require selflessness. This is going to require a lot of people within the hobby itself that just to work for free for no reason. I mean, that's what it's going to require, is people to have a sense of duty to do something. So you have to emphasize that, up front. Don't sell them on something that, something other than what it is.
No, there's a lot of people that will, though. I mean, we've over the past couple of years, there've just been really wonderful people have stepped out just to help the hobby grow. And it's I have a lot of faith in this community.
I would say that access is a big one for me. So I don't know if you could put that keyword in there, because it's still broad enough. But I would steal some stuff from the AMA. Go look at the language that they used. Go look at the Tony Hawk Foundation. Look at some of the language they use. The way that the Tony Hawk Foundation works internally is just a miracle, what they do. The way they funnel public funds and funds from out of nowhere into building like multi-million-dollar skate parks is just incredible. But they're the reason why every town in, the U.S. has got a skate park now.
Well, I think an important piece of this is going to be education. When the educational element is apparent, a lot more people step up. and honestly, that's even something that I've been excited about because I always loved the educational elements that we brought into flight test, and it was always very fulfilling. Now with Rotor Riot, it was a little more difficult because the age demographic was primarily older, but yeah, I believe in this. We can. Education needs to be a very important aspect of it.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. This is such a great conversation. I am so glad you said that about education. My whole key in the FPV community right now is pipeline, meaning I want to educate from very lower grades. I'm actually a teacher that was teaching FPV and STEM in my school. I'm a band teacher, but they needed some extra help on STEM, so I was into FPV and flying and such. And I also work with CNY drones, which is a big, huge component for getting people into this hobby the safe and educated way. And I think if we leverage groups like mine and others around the country to step up with that educational bit, I think you would be surprised at the result.
Oh yeah, I'm right there with you. I believe that. And I think there's a lot of education happening, but there's no rally point for it. So if somehow, through our website or whatever, we can start to have a rally point for all of these independent initiatives, it will give us all a lot more volume, for what we're trying to say and do.
Is there any way that Flight Test could find out how many people kind of source them for their educational needs and then have them put a flash in the pan with all of those entities that use their resources to say, hey, here's the rallying point that we need to talk about how to get FPV into people's hands safely and get it awareness out to the general public so that people aren't upset with people walking into an AMA club and wanting to fly FPV. That's, I think, the education from the standpoint of just getting people to understand what it's about, and again, bringing that culture aspect into it. It's a huge benefit when you can kind of get the peripheral around what FPV is, like production, education, as far as, aerodynamics. I mean, I could go on and on about it, but I think it's the peripheral things that we also need to kind of shore up and get those people on board with it as well. And Flight Test, I think, is one of those entities that has really shown, for me at least, they know how to shoot out STEM information. They do great lesson plans. So maybe we can leverage them for those people that are out there using them and get them to help us out, or at least be aware of this cause, that we're talking about today.
Yeah, I'm actually meeting Josh for lunch on Thursday, so we'll be going over some of this, and I'll get a. I'm not sure what his awareness is yet. I was going to wait till I met with him, because they were out at Oshkosh, but yeah, I think.
Well, can I interject 1 second?
Yes, please.
I do know that Josh Bixler has been looking at.
We can't hear you.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah,
To,
totally.
Mike,
yeah,
go ahead. Start over. We lost you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I've spoken to Josh Bixler, and he has hinted around seriously about a new CBO, a new community-based section that would be more inclusive to the type of flying that we do. It wouldn't be just FPV, but it would absolutely include FPV. And I know that right now, he's working with everything over at the Paul, and I don't know where that's at, but I do know that Mitchell Gray is probably the best resource in flight test to talk to about.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll follow up with them and see where that might be going.
Yeah,
education is a great driver for a location. Just like
It
the
is.
AMA has, come out to the club and go to class or learn to fly. Having an FPV location in town where everybody can walk out of Fry's and they know where to go to meet other people and learn and whatever else. That's kind of key to that.
We've actually established that here in New York, in Utica, with the SUNY Polytechnic campus. We have an AMA UMass association with them where we're setting up tiny whoop races for their RC club, and we're really integrating FPV into their RC club, almost, might I say, taking it over. And everybody's real jazzed about it, and there's just a real great vibe on campus where the powers that be are starting to discuss facts of where people can safely fly, how they're going to initiate drones onto campus, the variety of things that they want to do and use drones for, not of which just of racing and FPV, but search and rescue and all this other type of the kids can
And
learn.
now imagine having a vehicle or organization behind FPV that you could email right now and say, hey, we're doing this with the college or whatever. How can we convince them? Can you help us? And yada, yada, yada. And
Right,
that's where
and
an
that
organization like this could bring its power, its expertise to bear on that.
exactly, and reach the most amount of people because of the store, and they're being the only ones that or one of the only ones that really cater to the STEM and FPV multi-rotor crowd. And one more thing too. One thing that I think is very unique with our group here in Central New York and doing drones is we're trying to create team drone challenges where kids and adults, people from 8 to 88 can get together, build a drone for a specific challenge for which we set out. This year we're doing Forest Fury, which is like drones being equipped with certain sensors to go out and suppress fire, find firefighters, support firefighters' needs, and stuff like that. And I think that group activities like that will spur talk in Congress that FPV and drones in general are very, very project-based learning, which is what education is really turning into, minus any debate about public school or charter school or anything like that. The trend, in my eyes, is hands-on group activities, and drones do that.
Yeah, very much. I'm actually an instructional designer, everybody. I actually teach teachers, so a little bit of background on me.
Very cool.
Well, what about Scott Zimmerman over at Air Bear? Have you spoken with him, Chad?
No, I haven't. I actually haven't gone out to speak to anyone really. I just posted a little thing in the group just to get some conversations going, and not because this is still the early stages. I wanted to get more of a pulse of the active community before start bringing in the leaders. I guess too many.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No,
you get too many higher ups, and they drown out, the other opinions. So
yeah, well,
I actually have a small list of names for people like that, and I call it like a FPV climate snapshot or something. That's kind of what we need to do right now, right? Take a breath of where we're at, like a State of Union. And so I have a couple of names. There's Zephyr McIntyre, Zoe might be a good one, but there's a few others that you should probably talk to. Just get their feedback and input and roll it all into what you're gathering,
Yeah.
But there's not many. You don't go bringing in Sander and Trappy and all these guys,
not
right now. You don't.
That would be a
you
mess.
don't do that. You don't do that.
So so right now, and that's why I try to let you guys know, and whoever's in here early, that this is it's not going to happen overnight. There needs to be a lot of throwing stuff against the wall, coming back the next day and see what's stuck. And it's anytime that I've started, like when I started Flight Test, when I started Rotor Riot, there was about a 6-month period prior to anybody seeing anything that was just understanding what it was to be. And I'm not saying we need 6 months for this, because I feel like I've been in this zone for 3 years, but we do have to listen. We have to understand the climate and understand the voice, and I hate to say it, but we even lose touch. Like I even see it with the Rotor Riot pilots. Like we get in our bubble a little bit, and you know, new people come in, and we've lost touch with what it is to be fresh in this hobby. So
I
it's really
recently
important.
discovered that fact, like glaringly, when I taught a beginner something, and he excelled at it, and he took on the challenge, and he mastered it, and then he went over and he taught another beginner, and I watched him and I heard him, and he used like a completely different language that I did, and I was like, okay, so I couldn't have taught that other guy, only you could have. You know, it's just a total generational thing, and I realized that we need to teach the beginners, but we need to teach them in a way that they understand it the most, so that they can then transpose it over to their generation.
Absolutely.
And that's a big cultural thing that's happening. And people like Chad and I and all these other guys, we take our knowledge and our perspectives for granted. Not just our knowledge, but our very perspective on everything, we take it for granted.
Right. So if you know, all of you who come out of this voice chat, because this is a small group comparatively, try to propagate that message. Let people know, you know, we want to get a pulse on what's happening right now. You know, who is the crowd that we want to represent, and we want to make sure they're heard. So encourage people to get their opinions out there. Well, in here at least, you know, it's. I know a lot of people get fearful of sharing their opinions in the Facebook group, but I'll make sure that at least in this Discord channel that people are going to be heard. So.
I think,
okay.
you know, going back to the mission statement, I think everybody, at least in this, you know, voice chat, can agree that education needs to be, you know, a key foundation of that mission. And going back to access, I think that, you know, when we're talking about access, you know, access to and the freedom to fly and to do so in a safe manner, you know, but I think a lot of that is going to depend on that education, that training, that information dissemination, you know, throughout the FPV culture, and really fostering that culture of education and safety really needs to be a part of that mission statement.
The mission statement could be very basic, just of two parts, right? The mission statement can outline what we intend to do, maybe just 3 words, and then the mission statement can outline how we plan to accomplish those. Through what, right? And I view education as one of those items. Like, we are going to accomplish these things, and education is one of the means we're going to get there. Do you understand that?
Yep.
So that's how I would kind of categorize a lot of these keywords and thoughts that you're thinking about in things you want to do and things you're going to use to fuel that. How are you going to get there?
Yep. Well put. So hold on, I'm actually starting to construct it right now.
Yeah, if anybody wants, if I don't have a pen and paper in front of me, but if anybody just start tagging, writing sentences and take stabs at it, massage it until it gets right.
So yeah, I think it's the what, making it concise. Yeah, how concise or how broad is the big question.
I would say, like, you know, 3 things you want to do. You know, you want to support FPV pilots, which is an incredibly broad term. You want to advocate for the rights of FPV pilots and retain the culture of it somehow. I don't know how you'd want to word that, but we're going to do it through, you know, fighting for access, providing education, and la, you know. And so then it's real short and concise.
Hold on, you're almost there. So advocate. So we want to advocate for FPV pilots, and what was the other thing it said? Support or like protect the culture.
You could say, like, advocate for common sense governance, which is like incredibly, you know, just descriptive statement. No, but it still means something, right?
Yeah,
we're not going to go
does.
for. We're still not going to go for stupid, you know, regulations and so on and so forth. So you can just add some descriptors in there to help it. But.
Right. So
I mean, you just don't want to, make a list of like 7, 8 items. Just keep it
No,
shorter.
I think it should
Shorter
be
but broader.
Short and simple.
just for fun here. Here's the Tony Hawk Foundation mission. The Tony Hawk Foundation fosters lasting improvements in society with an emphasis on supporting youth in low-income communities through skateboarding programs and the creation of skate parks. So
there, they told you what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Exactly.
Right. Actually, what I like is they say they are doing it. Like, they don't say we're going to, it actually says fosters. So present tense.
We're already doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, this is good. This is good. Okay, so guys, I have to get going. I had scheduled an hour for this, and sorry, so short. But I'll try to do. Maybe they'll be short, but we'll do them frequently, just to keep tabs on everything. Anything? I have about 4 minutes before I have to go. So anything before I leave?
I just got Trappy. Just messaged me this moment. Says he's in.
What?
Trappy's in.
Does he?
So I just got Sasson. Yeah, he does. But I just got Sasson and Trappy to say they're in. I'm still working on Alex. We'll see.
Oh wow. Actually, there was a conversation in passing with Alex where I think he had already shown some interest. So
yes, I saw that.
I think he'll be on board.
I think you will too. Reach out to him.
Yeah, I will. Again, I wanted to be a little more put together before now, but
I would get their take on it, because if it might be incredibly hard to keep people like that happy in the long run, but if we can just get them in initially and buy into what we're doing, and then make that claim or support this, it'll go a long way.
Right. So, okay. So, well, great. Anything else before we break or before I go?
For the education, I know that some of the other larger companies, they like the students in drones, because I know that Battelle is offering a grant, and my school is able to get a grant from them for a drone club at my school, and it's gonna help support us a lot with that. And they were really interested in the idea when I actually got to talk to them about it. Some of the other larger companies.
And what?
Like the larger sized companies, they were interested in the drone stuff at the student level.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interest in drones.
The problem with the larger sized companies is that's what basically, gentlemen, we're up against. That's, I think, who really wants the airspace. It's the Amazons, it's the Targets and Walmarts that are vying for that airspace. That is going to chew into our recreational space, and I don't mean it.
You just said it though. You just said it. Recreational space, recreational FPV is not a thing. They don't know of it as an object. They've never thought of it as an object or a thing or a community.
They're actually in to get rid of all of model aviation in general. So FPV is nothing compared to fixed wing to them. Fixed wing is nothing compared to FPV to them. It's all in their airspace, and they want it.
Which is really interesting, because if you talk to Red Jensen that works out at NASA, I mean, he's a huge proponent of using RC as the next generation of aeronautical engineering.
So we need to get their support.
Well, I do have a little bit of an in with him, so I can absolutely talk to him about the possibility of helping.
I fortunately too have a back sort of a door to NASA as well. One of my good friends is a pilot and an avid FPV guy, and he works for this small little company here in Utica called AX, and they work with NASA on trying to integrate drones into the national airspace. And he's been working tirelessly with them Went out to Ames a couple of times to brief them on his work. Unfortunately, he can't talk to me about it, but I can at least put a bug in his ear, and maybe from two sides something will get knocked around there. And maybe NASA will come up and say, hey, look, if this is an educational standpoint that you're going to take away from all these kids or all these people, we have something to say about it. And then we've got a gorilla in the room that we can use.
Okay, that's great. I think well, this is good. We're making progress. It's slow, but I'm already really pleased
Chad,
with how many people are getting involved. Yes, sir.
that was another key word to add into your sentence, was recreational FPV.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
They clearly defined what we are.
Right.
We're not
And of course,
commercial.
that can take on
We're
a
not.
brand of a different spectrum too.
Yeah, I think recreational FPV is broad enough in scope, yet still centers on who needs the most help.
So no, that's good. Also, guys, a common tactic in any corporate atmosphere is to overreach. So for them not acknowledging or saying that, anything about getting rid of model aviation, it's simply overreaching to get more ground, knowing that when they say stuff like that, it's not actually going to happen. But what happens is it sets the tone, and that's where I don't want us to roll over on that. I think, we should be overreaching too. We should be saying,
we should be seeking beyond line of sight regulations.
Right.
Yeah.
We should immediately stretch for beyond line of sight regulations and hold us fast on it.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So we want to overreach in a sense that it doesn't discredit us. However, but we don't want to roll over on this stuff. I've seen a lot of people that are just like, well, let's just see if we can fly, in this small spot in my backyard. And it's like, no, let's reach for what we want it to be, what we believe it should be. And then, we have some
don't
ground
ask,
to cover.
don't get.
Exactly. So, okay, well, guys, I gotta go. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll do this again probably later this week. I'll try to throw out a time.
Okay.
It was nice meeting y'all.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Putting it all
Thank
together,
you.
Chad.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. See ya. Bye.
But